This is the XRP chart. I always like to start with no trend line so you guys can see how I arrive at the trend lines, what I'm essentially looking at. Now, first and foremost, we could see that XRP has made a higher high in recent months. You can see the high going back to January of 2025 was at $3.40. And then recently it went just above to $3.67 before this recent decline. Now, in all fairness, you can see the high here, and it did decline substantially going back into April. So if we look at a percentage decline basis, XRP had fallen all the way down, basically 50% before the latest move up. And that's pretty normal for cryptocurrencies to have these type of intra-cycle corrections, right? So in other words, in all fairness, if you look at where the high was here, what would be a 50% correction? You'd be looking at potential downside to about the 182 level before it would find that same sort of, let's say, next leg to the upside. All right, now, couple things in the near term that I'm seeing on XRP. So the first thing is that we have low pivots and low pivots. Very obvious that we're seeing some support right in this range, right? In addition,
Gareth Soloway shares insights on Bitcoin and crypto trends, covering charts, predictions, and strategies. Let's watch to uncover his outlook.
if we look at this, you can see there's a gentle trend line that slopes up as well that connects from this high going back to March of 2025 to the high in May and then the low in August and also in September, early September. And so what I'm really focusing on is this trend line as being the trigger point for either a leapfrog and move back to the upside or a breakdown where we start tracking for that kind of 50% retrace. Now, along the way, there will be significant support. So just to show you guys, we should all expect there to be some support around 260 to 259. And then there'll be an additional major level around 232. And you can see again how I arrived at those levels of support. But right now, if you're a bull, you really want to see XRP hold this 275 daily closing level because, again, this upsloping trend line, in fact, I'll flip it to a different color so it really stands out. But essentially, that's your level that you're monitoring for now. And if we could also put in a trend line here, very similarly, we have a downsloping trend line that's creating a little bit of a wedge pattern. You guys see that? So XRP right now, this would be looked at as a wedge pattern. The question starts to be asked or needs to be asked, which direction does it break? Does it break here to the upside, in which case you should go back to the recent highs and possibly even higher? In fact, I would argue you would go higher. Why do I say that?
Ether ownership in 2025 looks very different from its early days. On-chain data shows that just 10 addresses now hold more than 60% of all ETH. But most of these wallets don't belong to individual whales. Instead, they represent smart contracts, major exchanges, ETF custodians, and corporate treasuries that power Ethereum's ecosystem. The single largest holder is the Beacon Deposit Contract, which secures Ethereum's proof-of-stake network. With more than 68 million ETH locked, it accounts for over half the total supply, making it the beating heart of validator activity. Exchanges also play a huge role. Coinbase, Binance, and Bitfinex each control millions of ETH across staking pools and liquidity reserves. Meanwhile, Wall Street has entered the scene in force. BlackRock's iShares Ethereum Trust now manages over 3 million ETH, while Grayscale, Fidelity, and Bitwise add billions more through their funds. Public companies are following suit, treating Ether like a treasury asset, with firms such as BitMine Immersion Technologies holding vast staked reserves. Among individuals, Ethereum's co-founders still appear on the rich list. Vitalik Buterin, Joseph Lubin, and Anthony Di Oreo continue to hold significant amounts, while early buyers like Rain Lomas and the Winklevoss twins remain legendary figures. Together, these players form the ETH Billionaire Club of 2025, a mix of protocols, institutions, and visionaries shaping Ethereum's future.
Well, just connect your previous two highs, right? So your next leg up, if you do get a breakout of the wedge to the upside, would take us to an upside target of approximately 375, right? And again, that's very simple. Again, no crazy math here, no calculus. Major high from January to major high from July. That would give us our major high potentially later in the year, October, November, wherever it may be. Now, if we do break to the downside, then to me, you have stopping points at 260 right here, another stopping point at 232. But in reality, we have to be cognizant that your downside could be very similar in terms of the previous pullback on XRP that would, again, take us to about that 50% level, which look at all these lows right through here. This would be the level where if you're a believer in XRP, you're buying here at this level, right? At the 190-ish, 185 level. Because number one, it would essentially give you that 50% pullback that we saw here before that next leg up. Number two, on a technical analysis basis, all of these lows basically stopped here. You briefly pierced here, but I mean, you never confirmed and you rallied right back up. Then you showed that you could hold that line, or XRP could hold that line here before moving up, okay? Now, again, I would just say this. On XRP, the rating that I would give it, so everyone always asks me, well, are you near-term bullish? Are you near-term bearish? I would rate this, believe it or not, a neutral, because we're coming to the head of the wedge. And in other words, coming to the head means you're at a pressure cooker period where if it breaks out, it's going to leapfrog and just zoom up here. If it breaks down, it's going to go here and then likely down to this level below, and then obviously potentially here. So we have to see which way it breaks. Whichever way it breaks, I think that's your next major move.
Ether could be setting up one of the biggest bear traps traders have seen in years, according to analysts watching the charts closely. September may bring a correction that pushes ETH down toward the mid-$3,000 zone, with some even pointing to $3,350 as a potential support level. While that might spook traders into thinking the bull run is over, October could flip the script, sending Ether back up and potentially on its way to a new all-time high by November. Crypto trader Johnny Wu explained that the market could form a head and shoulders pattern this month, a classic bearish signal, only to invalidate it in what many call Uptober. This could trap bearish traders and force them to buy back at higher prices. Another analyst, Diane Crypto Trades, noted Ether's choppy movement between $4,300 and $4,500, adding that a retest of range lows could set the stage for a rebound. Despite short-term volatility, many believe Ethereum's long-term fundamentals remain strong. If you have been watching so far, thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe to Bitcoinzilla for daily news all for free. That's all for today's video. Until next time.